Ah, cartoons. So many fond memories, so many hours spent in front of the TV on a Saturday morning. And that love for cartoons has been translated into tons of different mediums. From movies, to toys, to lunchboxes. Yes, this is really my Ninja Turtles purple lunchbox. But there's one medium for cartoons that I found particularly interesting. Video games. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this series. Now, Toon Gaming isn't a Let's Play or anything like that. I'm going to be looking at equal parts the original animated show and the game itself, and whether or not that game was a good translation of the show. So just which of our favorite cartoon shows are we going to take a look at today? Well, I say we take a look.
Aaahh, Real Monsters. Perhaps a bit more of an obscure Nicktoon to many, but to me it was one of my favorites, and in honor of Halloween, it's quite appropriate. The show is from Klasky Csupo, the animation studio behind Rugrats, The Wild Thornberrys, Rocket Power, and As Told by Ginger. However, it was just the second show that Klasky Csupo ever released behind Rugrats, which may explain why it had a bit of trouble picking up traction. Airing for 4 seasons, starting in 1994.
Wow, that's pretty strange. That would make me just 6 years old when this show was on.
Aaahh, Real Monsters tells the story of 3 young monsters attending monster school and learning how to be better scarers. There's Ickis, the squeamish rabbit-looking one, Crumb, the gross one, and Oblina, the stick in the mud.
Interestingly enough, the voice actress who did Oblina in Aaahh, Real Monsters also did the voice of Chucky Finster in Rugrats.
But I always loved Aaahh, Real Monsters because of how creepy and downright gross it was. The monsters live in a giant dump and travel about the city in toilet pipes, and Crumb in particular was just disgusting. The world was always filled with wacky and interesting creatures, and a gross-out humor that seemed to fill a void left behind by Ren and Stimpy.
So, the show was good, but was it good enough to warrant a game? Well, yes, it was actually. Aaahh, Real Monsters for the Super Nintendo, to be exact. And it came out just 1 year after the show's release. Let's check it out. Now, Toon Gaming isn't the completionist. I'm not trying to beat the game and unlock every secret it has to offer, but more so just to play the game and ask one basic essential question. Is the game, in fact, a good video game interpretation of the animated source material that it was derived from? And of course, there's only one good way to find that out.
So into the game we go. Instantly, I can see the title screen mimics the title image from the show perfectly. But where's the Aaahh, Real Monsters theme song? I'll admit it's not as iconic of a theme song as some other shows have been, but why not just use it? It's not like you don't have the rights to it. Anyways, so right out of the gate, we're greeted by our high-heel shoe-wearing headmaster, the Gromble, and he's charging us to go find a sneaker. Okay, let's go find it. So, right when we get into the game, we're greeted by a very familiar junkyard. Touché, Aaahh, Real Monsters, that's a very nice touch and nod to the show. I hope we just don't have to see it every other level for the rest of the game. No, I'm sure we won't. Anyways, the controls for the game are relatively simple. The B button jumps, the Y button throws assorted garbage at your enemies, and the A button uses your scare, which will terrify any and all enemies off the screen. But it's the L&R bumpers which really brought this game to life for me. The L&R bumpers will toggle between the 3 characters and allow you to use a special team-based move for each individual character. For example, Oblina will allow the team to stack up and reach high areas unable to be reached by the team alone. Ickis will use his long ears to fling the group across large gaps, and Crumb will toss his eye out and allow the team to see unexplored zones. If the game got one thing right echoing the show, this is it. Aaahh, Real Monsters focuses heavily on teamwork. Ickis, Crumb, and Oblina working together to accomplish their goals and make it through Monster Academy, and I appreciate the idea that they have to work together to get through this game. However, I will say I never once had to actually use Crumb's eye-tossing ability. There are also a few nice bits of fan service. For instance, if you leave the gang idle for a bit, they'll do some familiar tricks from the show, which is funny and appreciated. You can also use the toilets to port through certain levels, which is also a nice nod. However, half the levels in fact do take place in the junkyard, and that's supposed to represent them traveling to locations, but it gets very repetitive and feels quite lazy. And while I love the 3 playable characters idea, it feels a bit cluttered at times with all 3 running around in a clump. It made dodging and jumping just annoying at times. Watch how if you leave the other 2 characters behind, they just sort of die off and respawn back to you. I don't know, that just felt a little strange at times. This led to me basically using Ickis for the entire game, because he's the smallest and fastest and best jumper as far as I can tell, switching to Ablina every now and then, again leaving Crumb, who is probably my favorite character from the show, completely out of the game for me. So, while I don't have complaints about the game's difficulty, though it can be a dick at times feeding you blind jumps into a pit of spikes, it's not about how hard the game is, but more about me asking, is this game really fun? And is that Reggie Rocket throwing a water balloon at me?
Well, Dexter's on, so I'm going to take a bit of a break and finish this up later.
Okay, back to it. So, wait, what? My game didn't save. Oh well, that's fine. I must have missed a part in the game where they gave me a password or a code to return to where I was in the game. You know, just like they do in tons of other SNES games.
Nope. There's no passwords and no save points, which means you've got to beat this game in one sitting.
Are you fucking kidding me?
So, while the game was alright, I just don't think it was fun enough for me to want to start all the way over again. I mean, there were a couple of great nods to the series, which were appreciated, so it's not a complete blunder as far as translation goes. But I just would have liked to see a lot more of the monsters from the Aaahh! Real Monsters mythos, and maybe a lot less time spent wandering around in the same old repeated junkyard. And no save points? No passwords? Come on! I'm definitely left feeling a little bit empty on this one.
He feels empty.
So that's it for the first episode. If you have a TOON game that you want to see me play on this show, let me know down in the comments. And I'll see you next time on TOON Gaming.